this meeting of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee. This meeting is being webcast. The emergency evacuation procedure is as follows. In the event of the alarm sounding again, that was a test, please leave the room calmly via the lobby area and the main front door of City Hall. Then turn right, walk down the ramp towards the cathedral, and the assembly point is in front of the cathedral. My name is Councillor Barry Parsons. I'm chair of this committee. I'm now going to ask the other members of the committee to introduce themselves, starting with my vice chair.
Councillor Richard Eddy.
Fantastic. And I'm going to go to Councillor Pete next, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Zoe Pete. I'm councillor for Avonmouth and Lawrence Weston.
Councillor Darrell State. I'm a grumpy. I'm the councillor for Frome Hale.
Rob Logan, councillor for Philwood.
And Councillor Gooch.
Hello, I'm Caroline Gooch, councillor for Westbury and Henleys.
And Councillor Thomas.
Jerome Thomas, councillor for Clifton.
Ellie Freeman, councillor for Bedminster, subbing today.
Councillor Shabalala for Central Ward.
Thank you very much. So, agenda item 2 is apologies for absence and substitutions. Apologies have been received from Councillor Lisa Stone, and as indicated, Councillor Ellie Freeman is substituting. I don't believe there are any other apologies because I can see everyone else here. So, agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. So now I'd like to ask committee members if you have any interest to declare in relation to any of the items of business on today's agenda. Councillor Thomas.
I consult on fire safety in high-rise buildings, so I mean, it doesn't have direct impact on the remediation item, but I think members should be aware of that.
Thank you very much. No, so we don't think that has any impact at all in your ability to take part in the discussion and the vote on that. So, agenda item 4 is minutes of the previous meeting. So there's one set of minutes to be approved, and that's from the meeting held on Friday the 30th of May 2025. I'd like to move the minutes of that meeting as a correct record. And
Could I second that, chap?
Thank you, Councillor Al Maghrabi. Got in there first, I'd say. So now I'd like to ask the committee if you're content to confirm both sets of minutes as a correct record. No, not both sets. One set of minutes as a correct record to be signed by me as the chair. That's great. Thank you. Agenda item 5 is chair's announcements. Just a few announcements today because we've got a lot on the agenda. I'd like to mention that the council has appointed an organisation to conduct a review into the Barton House evacuation, which took place in November 2023. More details of that, including the company name, will be shared once the contract has been signed. Members took part in a work programme setting workshop the other day. The report is going to be discussed at agenda item 11, and that provides an overview of the meeting that we had. Tenants and leaseholders will now have received either a digital or print copy of the latest edition of Housing News, which is the council's newsletter for our tenants and leaseholders. Just one more thing really I'd like to say is that we have a very busy agenda today. We've got lots of items on, so I may not be able to take everybody's hand for every single item, but what I'll do is I'll keep a tally of who's spoken so that everyone has an opportunity to speak equally. I hope that's okay with everyone, but we really do have a lot of business to get through today. Agenda item 6 is public forum. So up to 30 minutes are available for the public forum. Questions and replies have been circulated to committee members and published on the website in advance of the meeting. Questioners are permitted to ask up to 2 oral supplementary questions in total, if they wish. Supplementary questions must arise directly out of the original question or the reply, so entirely fresh questions on other subjects aren't permitted. We may not have a full answer for your oral supplementary question here, and in that case, we will follow up in writing. So, 11 public questions have been received for this meeting, and I have indicated that Dan Aykroyd would like to ask some follow-up questions. So, Dan, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a supplementary to my question 10, which is about the Barton House inquiry. The answer implies that the company conducting the inquiry will only be allowed to request documents to build a timeline of events rather than look at why certain officers failed to take action. Is that correct understanding?
Oh, I see what you mean. So no, I don't think that's the intention of the response. I think what the response says is that as part of the work, that consultant will have to build that timeline. So necessarily they will have to be requesting documents in order to create that. But actually the scope of the investigation hasn't been set yet. It will be set by those consultants working with residents in particular and with other stakeholders, including officers, but particularly residents. We want to make sure that this process is transparent and is driven by residents. And so they will have the opportunity to request documents that relate to whatever's within scope of the investigation. I think that's really important that they have that freedom.
And will other members of the public be allowed to have input on the inquiry? For example, people who've been following it very closely?
I think that's not part of the initial brief for the company that we're engaging. But again, I think this is something that will be part of the scope that will be set. So I think if residents say particularly want to make sure that other members of the public are heard from, then there's no reason why that couldn't happen. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Just a point of order, I didn't receive any responses to my supplementary questions from last time yet. I've been chasing with the policy committee people, but still waiting for the supplementaries.
Thank you, Dan. Let me just check on that. Okay, so I understand that you were emailed last week with some responses to those supplementary questions, but if you're not satisfied with those, then do let us know and we can follow up.
There's been a little bit of confusion. I asked a similar question at the Strategy and Resources Committee, but when both myself and Fatima came to this committee last month, we asked supplementary questions and we've not received written responses to those supplementary questions for this committee.
Oh, I'm really sorry for that, Tan. Let's look into that and we'll make sure that we get a response to you as quickly as possible. Since I think you are our only questioner today, would you like to ask any further supplementary questions? I think we do have a bit of time.
I do, but I can't phrase them in a polite enough way, so I won't.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dan. I don't see anybody else in the public gallery who has asked a question. So I'm going to move on now to public forum statements. We've received 3 statements. The first of those is from Nigel Varley, who's indicated that he'd like to speak. So Nigel, would you like to speak?
Do you mind if I sit down?
Absolutely.
Why bring the fane of a door mechanism to the Housing Committee? The simple answer is that it raises important issues which affect every tower block in the city, and hugely important issues about fire safety. Now, the door mechanism failed at Guild House. It took 3 days to repair. So what? Well, first of all, it wasn't recognised as an emergency. That's the only way out. And it took some persuasion to say that this is an emergency, has to be dealt with. Then it took 3 days to deal with. because there was a problem with the repairs team having the spare parts and the personnel to fix it. And the other questions it raises is there's a failure to recognise the needs of older people. Gilton House is a supported housing for the over 60s, and the response seemed to be, oh, it doesn't matter if the electric motor on the door's failed, you can push it open. Well, no, there are a number of people in our block who can't push it open. And I had to stay for several hours down in the foyer because there was an older gentleman out with his son who wouldn't have been able to get back in if I hadn't been around to push the door open. And certainly the people with mobility scooters wouldn't be able to push the door open. And then finally, there's a response by Councillor Parsons in the Post. And I'm not blaming you for this, you just simply repeated what you were told. Though it doesn't matter if the main door's broken because there are 4 exits. Yeah, but 3 of them are behind locked doors. And to give out that information in the public means that nobody bothered to find out what the real situation was. Now, there's been I've been to umpteen meetings, umpteen discussions, seen umpteen papers about fire safety in tower blocks in Bristol over the past few years. And when push comes to shove, it doesn't mean anything because the council can't respond to a real and dangerous situation. And this is something that needs to be addressed because, as I say, it doesn't just affect us, it affects every tower block in the city. And I shouldn't have to come here to the council to make sure it's raised because it will get buried in the complaints department. Every time I raise a complaint, it just gets pushed aside. It shouldn't have to go to the Post to raise issues. There should be a mechanism for dealing with these things instantly. And the tenants, it's not just me. I mean, people in Gilton House are really angry about this and really some of them quite frightened. So I implore the repairs team and the officers of the council that something like this never happens again.
Thank you, Nigel. I know this is a statement rather than a question, but just wanted to let you know that Claire Gibb, who's our Director of Transformation and Building Safety, I just wanted to let you know that Claire Gibb, who's our Director of Transformation and Building Safety, is doing some work on this. Is going to be in touch with you shortly. Thank you.
Somebody needs to come out and talk to the residents of Gilton House.
Yeah, thank you.
You apologise for the Post, but no apology is being given directly to the residents.
Yeah. Thanks, Nigel. Yeah, I think we can commit to that. Thank you. So our next question received was from Martin Rands. I don't think Martin is here though, so we'll move on to our statement 3, which is from Dan Aykroyd. Dan.
The inquiry needs to be set up properly. There are many questions I would like answers to relating to the conduct of the previous Director of Homes and Landlord Services. I would like to know why, after he was told in July 22 that Barton House has been assessed, it is inadequately robust to resist disproportionate collapse. He didn't seem to do anything for the next 15 months until after the change in law on 1st of October 23. The change in law meant that individual officers could be prosecuted for breaches of the law. I want to know why, after the scale of the breach, or after the scale of the problem at Barton House became known, why officers didn't get in touch with politicians on the 10th at the very latest, if not the 8th. The 10th saw ARUP put their concerns in writing to the council, which appears to be a summary of the contents of the workshop held on the 8th. Politicians weren't told until the 13th, even though it would have been clear by that point that the public would need to be told about the need for new inspections of the building, and those couldn't be kept secret because the council would need to go into people's flats. I'd like to know why the decision of whether to evacuate or not was planned to be taken at 2:30 or thereabouts. That's a ridiculously late time to be starting an evacuation. I'd like to know why the council didn't have a plan to get ahead of the information cycle by, giving out any information. I would like to know why the mayor suggested that the evacuation was hindered by councillors leaking the news to the press. Councillors were only briefed at 5 p.m. Both myself and Mr. Seabrook had news of the problem by 3:30. I learned it by just standing in the lobby and listening. I fail to see how councillors can leak something hours after I've become aware of it. I'd like to know when the Mayor suggested on approximately the 20th of November that people could be back in their flats in 2 to 3 weeks, if that was at all a reasonable thing to say. The time frame would have depended on the state of the building, and that depended on new inspections, which hadn't happened yet, and then the inspections would need to be analysed, which would take a month. I have questions about Mr. Graham's remuneration, because it looks a lot like he got given £64,000 to leave quickly and quietly. You might hear a story that the position of Director of Homes and Housing was regraded during Mr. Graham's notice period due to the difficulty of the job. The thing is, pay rises need to be done for a reason. Like if someone said, give me a pay increase and I'll stay, that would be a reason to give them the pay increase. But if you're giving money to someone who's already handed their notice in or been given notice, there's no reason to give them a backdated pay rise. That's just giving them money for no reason. And it's meant to be classed as compensation for loss of office in the audit. Though paying somebody who has just monumentally mucked up their job a bonus £64,000 to go away isn't a good look. I note the current Director of Homes and Landlord Services is paid 67k. The previous director was paid close to 140k. I also have to note that one of those people is a black woman and the other person is a white man. I would very much like the difference in salary to be explained to me.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. So that's the last of our public forum statements. So that concludes public forum for today. Thank you, everybody. Agenda item 7 is the finance report update. So this report presents the Housing and Landlord Services financial forecast at period 2 against the approved budget at the end of May 2025. This report is for information only. Just a note, the officer recommendation which has been published in this report incorrectly states period 10 instead of period 2. So with that correction, I'd like to invite Martin Johnson, who's our finance business partner for Housing and Landlord Services, to introduce and outline this report. The policy committee team are going to display the presentation on the screen. This has also been published online and circulated to members if you'd rather look at it on your own device.
Thank you, Chair. So the Period 2 finance reports on the revenue and capital forecast positions of both General Fund Housing and the HRA. In summary, the General Fund revenue shows a forecast overspend of 0.1 million and capital an underspend of 5 million against a budget of 69.6. The HRA revenue forecast position is a 1.3 million overspend and capital underspend of 15.2 million against a budget of 184 million. The reasons for the forecast over and underspends are detailed in the report, the main points of which I will cover now. General Fund revenue. Sorry, I've just lost my script. The overspend of 0.1 million relates to the non-achievement of savings in respect of the hospital trust property. This property was to be used as supported temporary accommodation, which would have provided full cost recovery against subsidy loss. At this point in time, we've been unable to agree a leasing structure that enables us to onward lease the property to a provider of supported temporary accommodation. However, we continue to try to engage with the hospital trust to come to a mutually acceptable resolution to this issue. A potential risk has been identified in respect of the Renters' Rights Bill and welfare reform. However, at the time of writing, there was insufficient detail to enable us to assess exactly how these policies might impact on us and what the financial consequences may be. This is an ongoing piece of work. Could we have the next slide, please? On General Fund capital, the main variance is against the housing delivery programme. 5.1 million of slippage has been reported and is made up of 0.5 million against Philwood Public Realm and 2.2 million for the Philwood Cultural Hub. Both of these schemes are supported by the Levelling Up Fund, and the revised position and delivery timetables have been agreed with MHCLG. This slippage is offset by an overspend against the refugee resettlement programme of 0.2 million as an additional property was secured. This overspend is funded from further grants received. Could we have the next slide, please? The HRA is forecasting an overspend of 1.3 million. This is driven by an overspend in repairs and maintenance of 3 million. During period 2 reporting, it was initially thought that this was down to a possible issue in the alignment of revenue and capital budgets. However, upon investigating further, it is now clear that this was down to the double counting of savings. Mitigations against this issue have been identified and are included within the HRA's recovery plan. The overspend is offset by, to a degree, by 1 million underspend in staff costs due to vacancies within supervision and management, an additional 0.3 million of service charges income, and 0.2 million on bad debts. There are a further 0.1 million of other miscellaneous movements. A number of risks totalling 1.5 million have also been identified, the most significant of which relates to depreciation. A detailed review of the calculation is underway and will be completed soon. Could we have the next slide, please? HRA 1, the Home Improvement Programme, is showing an underspend for the year of 15.2 million. 12.1 million of these underspends are slippage on building safety works in various blocks where there are delays in relation to the building safety regular certification for works to proceed. This is a sector-wide issue, which is not just affecting Bristol City Council. However, we are taking a proactive approach to identify an alternative delivery route to undertake these works as soon as is practicable. 4.4 million has been identified against energy efficiency budgets as a saving, and work is currently underway to determine how to best utilise this to provide more works across other SHDF schemes. Offsetting these underspends is a 1.5 million overspend in relation to structural remediation works at St Jude's, as the initial scope of the project has been expanded to include fire alarm installations and the assessment of balconies. Any currently identified overspends will be met within identified underspends so that the programme as a whole is delivered within current budget constraints. Capital receipts at period 2, the HRA is on course to exceed its capital receipts target of 8.4 million. However, the driver for this is an increased volume of right-to-buy sales as a result of the changes to the rules in November 2024. As a result of the change in mix of receipts from the budget, the mix of capital financing will need to be kept under review during the course of the year. Any significant impact arising as a result of this will be reported at the appropriate time. And covenant compliance. Despite the reported overspend at period 2, the HRA does remain compliant with its covenants, albeit currently with little to no headroom against the interest cover ratio. Could we have the next slide, please? So, in summary, whilst the HRA is currently forecasting an overspend, mitigating actions have been identified and work is underway to deliver them. As a result of this, there is no immediate concerns over compliance with covenants for the current year. I'll now take questions.
Thank you very much, Martin. So we're now going to have a little time for members to ask questions and make any comments that they would like to on this report. As I said, we've not got a huge amount of time for each item today because we've got such a packed agenda, so I'd appreciate it if questions and comments are kept concise. And I may not get to everybody's hand, as I've said. I'm going to start with Councillor Thomas.
Thanks very much. From my reading of that, that looks like the HRA's forecast to hit budget. Is that correct?
The period 3 forecast, given that this is period 2 we're reporting on, the period 3 forecast is showing a reversal of the overspend position.
Yeah, so that's really good. So well done to the team for that. I'm curious about, I'd quite like to drill down into the council's kind of carpentry company and its performance, because that has come to this committee before, and obviously we're putting an investment into that, and just seeing how that is tracking would be good. So if that could be shared somehow, that would be appreciated. And could you say again what on the capital and the huge amount of building repairs, why there's the underspend? I didn't quite understand that.
So in order to undertake certain safety works in tower blocks, we have to make an application to the quite newly formed building safety regulator. And there are significant delays in applications being assessed by the regulator and receiving the necessary certification to actually undertake the works. And it's not just with Bristol, it's across the country.
Yeah, thank you, that's really helpful.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thomas. I've got Councillor Logan next.
Hi, I'd like to ask a question on the slippage in the housing delivery programme. So page 20 of the big pack. So it identifies slippage of 5 million. Half of that relates to good things happening in Filwood. So I know what those things are, and there has been tremendous work by the programme team to, in the second case, bring the spend under the limit. So there was some value engineering needing, and that was delivered really well. And there is a current outstanding piece of work around the public realm, which we haven't actually had the result of yet. So we are actually waiting for what will happen in the public realm. And there is a, if we don't have the result within a certain amount of time, it will be questionable how much public role we can do. But I know those things are happening, and I know it's slippage. My question relates to the other thing, which is slippage by housing association development. And what's not clear from the report is whether that is slippage, just the same thing will happen, but it'll happen a bit later, or whether it is, are there any schemes which we expected to come to fruition but actually won't come? So is it both of those things?
Sorry, can I just clarify, Chair? Was the question regarding the funds that we provide to other providers, not what we are delivering ourselves? Right.
So yes, Councillor, at the moment, every scheme... That stopped working. Every scheme that we are intending to work with RPs and ourselves on are progressing. Some of them are delayed. We do have a number of delivery challenges in the city, as you know, with viability, which we're looking to address. Which development in particular are you talking about? And I can go away and come back to you separately if you'd like.
The only programme that's identified is the contractor bankrupt in Luckwell, but I don't know how much of a. It doesn't say how much of a.
Shall I look into that and come back to you separately outside of this meeting?
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm not seeing any further hands, so I think I'm going to move us on now. So, for the clarity of the committee and the benefit of members of the public present, the officer recommendation in this report is that the Committee for Homes and Housing Delivery notes the report on the Period 2 forecast for housing and landlord services. Thank you very much. Our next agenda item is item 8, the quarterly performance report for quarter 4, 2024-25. This report presents the year-end performance outturn relevant to the remit of this committee against the Council's business plan for quarter 4, 24-25. This is a non-key decision and the report is for noting. So I'm going to invite Nick Smith, Strategic Intelligence and Performance Manager, to introduce and outline this report. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just start by clarifying the date point, because this is the quarter 4, this is the year end for 24-25. Obviously, and everything that was in the report in the dashboard was emailed to all councillors in the middle of May, and where it takes a while to then get through to all of the committees. The first committee this period went to within mid-June, toward the end of the reporting process now. So yeah, it's linked to the previous corporate strategy and previous business plan, and this is the final year-end version of that. As Chair noted, it is linked to the metrics from the business plan relevant to the remit of this committee. As always, there's a cover report which highlights the key points we'll look at. There is also 2 appendices, the Appendix A1, which is the dashboard itself with all metrics in, including for this committee, and Appendix A2, which is specifically just the metrics extracted for this committee. So, of the one that we've highlighted, there's several there that are noted, such as increase in numbers of people sleeping rough, the average relet times, number of council house repairs still outstanding, and empty council houses. But several of those, it is worth noting in the detail, although all 4 of those are red from a target perspective. Some of them are better than national average or are showing improvement, even though they're significantly worse than target. And there's several others that are noted as well, ones that are doing better, and some of the city outcomes, affordable homes delivered, etc., and some of the actions from the previous business plan. So, and then just as a final point before we move into questions, just to note that we are now consulting with councillors on the new business plan that'll be for 25 to 28. It's going to be a much longer period. This is, of course, on the back of the new corporate strategy that was ratified at full council last month. And so there will be no Q1 report, as that period will be instead looking at the details of both the business plan, but also in the new processes, we'll go into further detail later, working with committees to see what other metrics you want to see in addition to those that may be allocated to the business plan in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And can I just check with you? So, what form will that consultation with members take around the around our new performance reporting?
It'll be twofold. One, we'll share the the details in August. And so it'll be a couple of weeks where everyone will have access to the full spreadsheet of what's been proposed. And we're also in process of arranging, currently trying to set it up through agenda briefings, but one where all members of the committee will be invited as well. We're just, through Democratic Services, sorting out a date. Because there was one proposed for late August, but I'm not sure that date's working, so we'll be finding another date.
Thank you. So I'd now like to invite members of the committee to ask any questions or make any comments they would like to. Councillor Eddy.
Just a simple question of Nick. Obviously, I'm aware of present improvement plans and action plans to do with reducing the average relet time, the council house repair delays, and the number of empty council houses. In Richard James' report, in several on this agenda, references made to the need to actually improve the quality of our data collection. Is it likely, are we fairly confident we have a full picture here based upon all the current data?
I think Claire is going to answer that one.
Data is still a challenge for us, but it's significantly better than when I joined. Our void data is actually good, but I have to be honest and say it highlights issues concerning how we end tenancies and how we procure and deliver void works. So we are operationally looking at this in a deep dive, and we'll be putting together a plan to demonstrate to council how we're going to meet our efficiency targets, how we're going to turn voids around more efficiently, and also how we can ensure that we maximise the number of homes available for the people of Bristol. So the data is not perfect, but I would say we're sitting at about 80% confidence.
And I've got Councillor Freeman next.
Just a quick question about the relet times, which you said, although it's improving, obviously still quite off the target. I just wondered how realistic that target was, given that you're on 82 days and the target is 50. That feels like quite a big jump, and you've said that there's lots of things to come in that will help that. But it would be a shame if if that target is missed continually, because it's just quite ambitious.
Personally, I don't think the target is a stretch target. I have delivered void works consistently for organisations with 40,000 plus stock within 50 days. So I don't wish to increase the target. I wish to keep it as a stretch target, but be more realistic in how we report it so that members can see progress against the target.
I've got Councillor Al-Maghrabi next.
Yes. What is the current? So, what is the current total number of voids, and how many of these are classed as temporary accommodation? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Claire.
Can I get that information to you? I don't have the figures to hand, but I'll make sure that we circulate it after the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. With regards to people sleeping rough and affordable homes as kind of key sort of metrics which are underperforming, it would be great to kind of be able to see those graphs over time of people sleeping rough and affordable homes being delivered along with the forecasts, just so that we can get a sense of how those are tracking over time. I think that was the... oh yes, the other thing is picking up on Councillor Logan's point earlier about number of homes being built. While it's kind of not a direct, well, or to some, it's only partially a direct responsibility of the committee, seeing total number of homes being built in the city, in the performance metrics, and similarly those tracked over time would be really helpful as well.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. So I think these are things that can be picked up as part of the work we're doing at the moment on our performance metrics. But Nick, would you like to?
And just purely just one point of practicality is that within the dashboard, the Power BI dashboard circulated Appendix A1, there is a metrics over time button within the dashboard, and that will give, for the ones you mentioned there, goes back to about 2018. So there's that, it is available within the dashboard.
Okay, thank you.
I've got Councillor Gooch next.
I was just wondering about the time taken to get repairs done, both with voids and generally. Are they all contracted out, or is there an in-house team? And is there anything that could be done, say, increasing the size of the in-house team to facilitate getting repairs done more rapidly to reduce our voids, invest to save?
The standard works that are covered by our in-house team are delivered, and that is your basic safety checks and your repairs, standard repairs and maintenance to meet the void standard. We also have a supply chain of contractors, and what we are looking at the moment is what is the best route to deliver the efficiencies. I agree that we need to look at this and invest a bit of time to look at it, but I don't think we need to invest extra resources or money. It's just about managing more accurately what we've got and allocating specialist tasks to specialist contractors and then actively managing them. But my premise is that we have an in-house team who our residents know. When somebody says that they wish to resign their tenancy, we have an opportunity to go and visit them, and those are the sort of things that we can do without extra money. It's just a different way of working to get the efficiencies.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
Wanted to ask about damp and mould. So there's a reference that the performance on dealing with damp and mould is not where we want it to be, and I think all councillors would have experience of that from casework. So it's important that that's recognised. The comment is that there's a leaflet with hints and tips on managing moisture. That implies that the issue is residents' behaviour rather than things in infrastructure in the home, and that isn't really my experience. I want to know if is that our perception, that it is mostly residents' behaviour that's the cause of this.
I mean, I think personally, again, I would certainly agree with you, Rob. I think that in fact the information that we give to residents, I think, is pretty clear that that there are there are certain kinds of damp and mould that resident behaviour will not infect, and in fact, there's a lot of advice on that we offer on how to request repairs, how to get in touch with our teams to make sure that so that's actioned. I think one of the challenges that we've got actually is that over the years, because we have ageing stock, and because I think historically damp and mould repairs have not been considered a priority. One of the challenges sometimes is actually making sure that our residents understand that that damp and mould has a big impact on their health and their family's health, and that they do need to make sure that that they let us know so that we can make the repairs that are needed. I'd like to hand over to Claire, I think.
Resident lifestyle is not my perception. My perception is that we have spent a lot of time and effort treating the symptoms of damp and mould, and we are now moving towards a diagnose why we have damp and mould. And once we have diagnosed why we have it, we can then talk to the householder and say, this is why we have damp and mould. Now, on the odd occasion, it is a resident issue. We have become a lot better in allocating and referring to fuel poverty charities, referring the property, if it's thermally inefficient, to our energy programme. But the majority of our cases is a change in culture to be preventative and sort out the problem rather than to continue to treat the symptoms. The number of damp and mould cases has gone down. I suspect it's because it's summer and it's been dry. But we have commissioned and had the first findings of an independent review as to our preparedness for AWAB's law. And there's a lot of work to be done.
Thank you. I think Richard would like to come in briefly, and then I think I'm going to move us on.
Yeah, I'll just come in really quickly just to say, under the Consumer Standards Report, in the update there, we do talk about damp and mould, and the programme board has agreed some revised dates for inspections and works to the backlog. So we do talk about it there, and we will be coming back to future committee meetings to show you how we're doing tracking performance against those targets.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to move us on now. So the officer recommendations are that the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee notes performance against the business plan relevant to this committee, including the issues raised and measures to address performance issues to be implemented by relevant services. Thank you. Next is agenda item 9, which is the Corporate Risk Management Report for Q1 2026. This report provides an update on current significant strategic risks relevant to this committee to achieving the Council's objectives as set out in the Corporate Strategy 2025 to 2030. It summarises progress in managing the risks and actions being taken as at Q1 of 2025-26. This report is for information only, and I'd like to invite Sonia Fersland, who's Interim Executive Director for Housing, to introduce and outline this report. Sonia.
Thank you, Chair. The risk report hasn't changed significantly since last committee, so I'm going to briefly talk us through particularly the one critical risk and the three medium risks. The one critical risk, which has materialised, is in relation to our failure of the HRA of our homes to meet our statutory obligations. I'm not proposing to go into significant detail on this because we've got the report later on the agenda around the Consumer Standards Programme, which has been developed to address this particular risk. The additional risk is around the Tackling Homelessness Programme. The risk scoring there has improved as the programme itself is proving to be effective and is delivering the majority of the savings, actually, which were planned for this year. The remaining risk then is specifically around RAC, And I just want members to note that this is a corporate risk, so it's a risk shared with our colleagues in corporate property. The position for housing is perhaps better than for corporate property in terms of our understanding of our risk around RAC. So we conducted for all of our homes a desktop review, and we determined that we didn't have any structural RAC in any of our homes. We did identify a possible risk in relation to rooftop tanks and motor rooms. So we then conducted visual surveys on those components and didn't find anything of concern. Because we have a number of high-risk buildings, in particular our high-rise residential buildings, as we are doing work to develop the building safety cases, we are commissioning a number of structural surveys, and what we will do as part of that work is to make sure that we're asking that contractor to look specifically in relation to any potential concerns around RAG, but that's really a kind of belt and bases approach. So whilst the corporate risk remains around the investigation and looking at buildings, the position for housing is better.
Thank you very much, Sonia. And for the benefit of members of the public who might be listening, just to say, RAC is an acronym for, I just looked this up, Reinforced Autoclaved Aerated Concrete, which is a building material that was used historically and has been associated with safety risks in buildings. I'm now going to ask members of the committee for their questions and comments. Councillor Eddy.
Chairman, I will obey your command, be brief and businesslike. It's not really a question because we've got more time to debate tackling homelessness later on, Paul Sylvester's being in a report. But can I say we've received regular reports, and the one later forms part of this, but it has been very encouraging to be a new one. I hope the committee to see both of the positive effect dealing with the curse of homelessness, but equally so the impact of our financial savings. So well done, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor Eddy. I'm looking for hands, and Councillor Shabalala.
Thanks, Chair. How are we managing the risks really put forward by the Ombudsman and the regulator? And I say this because most of our slippage and our major projects delays is waiting for the certification. Yet it's something that was newly introduced, but this newly introduced thing, maybe they don't have the capacity to really monitor all the large projects that are submitting the applications, and therefore now local authorities are now at the financial burden of delayed major projects. Now, as we have more of these major projects, we may continue to have additional slippage or delay. How are we responding to something that's not within our control? Yet it's meant to be safeguarding residents, but it's actually creating quite a huge financial burden back.
So we obviously, in terms of the building safety regulator itself, I think government have recognised that there are significant delays which are causing issues and safety concerns, I think, up and down the country. And indeed, the building safety regulator has recently been moved from the health and safety executive over to MHCLG with its own specific board and a new chair who will oversee that work. I think one of the challenges the regulator has had, which it is a challenge for the entire sector, has been being able to secure people with the right skills to do the work. And I think that's a national skills shortage in relation to fire, and those individuals with the right qualifications are very much in demand. In terms of what we are doing is where we know that we have risks in relation to our buildings, be they structural or fire safety risks, particularly in relation to our high-rise residential buildings, is we're trying to mitigate those risks. So we've been doing that in a number of ways, including the installation of alarms, installation of sprinklers. Where we don't have alarms in buildings, we have waking watch. So what we're trying to do is to manage the risks themselves. The building safety regulator does enable us to do work in emergencies, and we have used that provision, and we are indeed using that provision for the works required at St Jude's. There are structural works are required there. Claire has had a look at the regulations from the building safety regulator. We believe that the best approach there is to proceed with the procurement of the works while in tandem submitting our application to the building safety regulator, because that's the best way to enable us to manage risk.
Thanks, and I guess that leads to reducing viability concerns, but those viability concerns may continue if the regulator doesn't necessarily respond by providing the certifications in a shorter period. How are we ensuring that project viability is really at the core of all these schemes that are being delivered, especially seeing that it's not just a Bristol thing, there's a huge demand on a few suppliers?
So I think the viability issue probably is specifically in relation to our new build, and what we are seeing, and which Louise will tell you, is that there's a real reluctance, I think, from private sector, but particularly from our RP sector now, to build tall buildings. And you know, when you've got limited space in a city and you're really interested in improving density where appropriate, we are seeing that as a challenge. The viability issue for our existing homes is less of an issue, because we have obligations to make these repairs in our homes, and what we have to do then is within the business plan is to take account of that. It is a challenge though in terms of sometimes the longer that these things drag on in terms of getting into procurement, you can find, particularly where we've got material cost inflation, which we've had for a number of years ago, that the cost of those works will increase over time. But we are constantly looking at our budgets and our long-term business plan to make adjustments, because doing this work is an absolute priority for us.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Logan, and then I'll move us on.
Corporate Risk 48 on delivery of new affordable housing. Since the last committee, we've thank you for circulating the minutes of the Chair's briefings. These are really useful source of information. But we had the Chair's briefing on the 30th of June, I think, had a discussion over whether the Corporate Risk 48 should be removed due to perceptions of our lack of influence over that issue. Could we have confirmation that that's not going to happen?
I don't think we've made that decision yet, have we? Louise, would you like to respond on that?
It really isn't working today. So no, we haven't made that decision at the moment. The challenge with dealing with the whole affordable housing piece as a risk is we know we're never going to meet need. So what are we actually mitigating against, and how are we recording that? So our risk is never really going to change. We're having a conversation about whether we report this in a different way, through our KPI reporting, through regular updates to committee, and whether that sits within that wider risk portfolio, or if there's a better way of managing that conversation.
Would that proposal come here when it's made, or is it made elsewhere?
As we discussed earlier, I think our whole sort of structure of how we report performance and risk is under review at the moment, and members are going to be involved in those conversations. So those are going to be worked on with members of this committee. Great. Let's move on then. So. The officer recommendations in this report is that the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee notes this report. And that's it. Thank you. Agenda item 10 then is the Housing and Consumer Standards Programme and Compliance Update. So this report is for committee to note and comment on the following items. The Housing Consumer Standards Programme Update, including the Housing Consumer Standards Programme Internal Audit Report and the Social Housing Service 4-year Audit Plan. The latest Landlord Compliance Performance Report, the Residents' Voice Actions and Feedback from the Housing Scrutiny Panel, the update on new and upcoming legislation and regulatory changes, and the update from the latest regulatory review meetings with the regulator of social housing. This report is for information only, and I'd like to invite Richard James, who is Housing Consumer Standards Programme Lead, to introduce and outline the report. Richard.
Thank you. There's quite a bit in the paper, because I'm mindful of time, so I'll just whiz through the key highlights, and but then happy to answer any questions. So in the section 1, so the programme update, a summary is that we're continuing to make progress on the tasks. From the original actions, there were about 100 when we started the programme about a year ago. There's now just under 50, so we're 50% through, and we've included those tasks and within the strategy that was approved at the last meeting, and what that's going to do is change how we report on progress in line with the milestones that we set out in the Housing Consumer Standards strategy. On progress, generally, we've closed down a number of tasks, specifically to do with neighbourhood to do with complaints and resident feedback. We've delayed some tasks to do with neighbourhood and tenancy, but we've re-baselined some of those plans, and those targets are within the new strategy. I won't repeat, but I think it's important just to mention the damp and mould inspections and works targets, just to note, following our discussion earlier. I think the other thing for the committee to note on the update is the number of important reviews that are underway and nearing completion around Arab's Law, our asbestos management, NEC health check, and asset data and compliance. They're really important pieces of work which impact the delivery of the programme, and we'll be coming to the next meeting with more information about the outcome of those reports. On performance, just to note that electrical, backlog repairs, gas servicing and CO detectors, lifts and Legionella is all good progress. There has also been some progress on damp and mould and fire actions, although there's more work to do in those areas. The other area just to pull out, which we've also discussed, is around data assurance and the work that's ongoing to improve that data assurance position, and that's linked to one of those key reviews I mentioned earlier. Residents' voice, there's work going on the approach to resident engagement. Again, I won't go into that too much detail now, but I did want to pick out comments from the Housing Scrutiny Panel. We meet with the Housing Scrutiny Panel monthly, so we had a discussion with them about high-risk fire actions, and especially the oldest high-risk fire actions, NEC implementation and consistency of response repairs were themes that we're continuing to talk with them about. The other thing to pull out is the horizon scanning. You'll see from the report there's an awful lot that the government has recently announced about regarding changes in the social housing sector. There's some new consultations, but there's also confirmation on previous consultations. So we will be coming back to future committees to highlight what the implications of that are and how we respond to it. And I think it's likely that we'll probably have a separate workshop with the committee to talk around some of those areas, because they're quite significant, some of the ongoing changes. The last thing for me to note is around the regulator social housing engagement. We had the latest Housing Consumer Standards Programme Board yesterday, where the regulator were in attendance to observe that meeting. We've not had any feedback from that as of yet, but again, we'll include that in the next update. And also just to say that our next general monthly meeting with the regulator will include, not the next one, the one in September, will include Nick Hibbard and Councillor Parsons will be in attendance at that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I'd now like to invite comments and questions from members. I'm going to start with Councillor Thomas.
Thank you very much, Richard. I mean, lots of good detail in here. I think this is missing an executive summary. Really, you know, there's kind of 60 pages of detail, and there are probably 10 priorities, and having a one-page summary at the front, ideally with kind of red, amber, green and some notes on progress, would make it much easier to understand what's actually happening. So my request would be that next time we have this item, because it's a standing item, that we do have an executive summary with the kind of key priorities being addressed in that.
Yes, noted. I think the new performance reporting that we bring in will hopefully provide that, because it's going to show progress against each of the milestones, and then in there we'll pull out any exception areas. So absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be looked at with a sense of, does this help people to understand what the key issues are and how they're progressing? And sometimes you can automatically pull that data out and it shows it, and sometimes you can have an automated report and it really doesn't help you at all. So there needs to be a human involvement as well to sort of understand the audience and whether the audience is going to really grasp what the key issues are from that executive summary.
Thanks, Doreen. Councillor Gooch.
I'm going to go on about repairs again. Well done on getting the repairs down. 11,360 down to 9,200. Is there, obviously, we'd like there to be no outstanding, but I appreciate it takes time to do that. In mindful of the comments from Public Forum, what constitutes an emergency, and how quickly can you do emergency repairs?
Yeah. Do you want me to answer that one?
I think Claire can answer that.
The National Federation of Housing classifies an emergency repair as an immediate danger to the occupants of the building or the fabric of the building. At Bristol, we have a very high number of repairs that are reported as emergency. So what we are doing at the moment is setting up definitions for our colleagues in the contact centre, so that we are able to explain to residents whether or not something is an emergency, it's an urgent, or it's a right to repair, or if it's a routine. So the repairs policy is being placed into a series of service standards, which we will share with the members for adoption, and we will share that with residents so that we can more clearly articulate the service that people can expect.
Can I just come back? So I'm just thinking about the Public Forum. So having a door that people can't open, where would that fall? Because he said, you know, it took 3 days to sort. The classification of that door repair should have been an urgent repair if we look at the National Federation classifications. However, that is based on general needs accommodation. So the work that the council has to do is to identify our occupancy needs and risks in order to set the service standards together. So whilst technically the door could be opened and closed, if we have a situation where a householder or a resident cannot get to their home, those are the definition decisions that we're going to have to take.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
Thank you for a tremendous report. Huge amount of detail. Thank you for your points on damp and mould and other issues. Thank you also for including the internal audit report. Always like to see an internal report being used in that area. That report identifies 4 risks, 4 medium risks with management responses. The first 3 of them, I think, are extremely clear. The last one's on stock condition surveys, essentially. And most of the management response is about the introduction of the NEC system. And the dates of that, and there's something called a cautious long stop date of December, I think. But Could I ask what the update is on the delivery of that?
Thanks, Rob. Sonia.
So we hope by the 31st of July, we will have a definite date in terms of when we will go live with our new IT system. We're still working through some issues on configuration, user testing, and looking at reporting requirements. But we are heading for week commencing the 23rd of September. And as I say, by the end of this month, we'll have a specific date that week that we intend to go live with NEC. We are looking, however, as part of the compliance working around whether NEC will give us everything we need in the interim period in relation to compliance, which most of the consumer standards actually relate to. And that's because actually once we've completed the implementation of the system, we then need to go to the upgraded version. So we are looking in between the new system and the upgraded version at, we've already got a system called Compliance 365, and we're looking at the viability of just extending the use of that to cover more of the compliance areas so that we can continue to get good data in terms of understanding where our challenges are.
I'm going to go to Councillor Eddy and then I'll move us on.
Firstly, could I support Councillor Thomas's plea for an executive summary? This is quite a dense report, but in fairness, both the officers and the chairman, I know, are determined that the committee has as full information as possible. But it certainly, in my view, would help the committee to consider the primary issues. Secondly, whilst Richard frankly acknowledges the work to be done, which we appreciate, there are real things we ought to actually support and welcome. I mean, as Caroline said, the further reduction in backlog repairs is welcome. And the fact we continue to prioritise the longest to highest priority cases, but also there's real improvements and good success on gas servicing, carbon monoxide detectors, lift servicing and Legionnaire risk assessments. So again, well done, you and your team, Richard.
Thank you very much, Councillor Eddy. I'm going to move us on then. So these are the officer recommendations that the Committee for Homes and Housing Delivery notes the Housing Consumer Standards Programme update in Appendix A1, including the Housing Consumer Standards Programme Internal Audit Report, which is Appendix A2, and the Social Housing Service 4-year Audit Plan, which is Appendix A3. That the committee notes the latest Landlord Compliance Performance Report in Appendix A4, as well as the residents' voice actions and feedback from the Housing Scrutiny Panel, the update on new and upcoming legislation and regulatory changes in Appendix A5, and the update from the latest regulatory review meetings with the regulator of social housing. Thanks, everyone. Agenda item 11 is the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee Work Programme Update. So this report provides an overview of the outcomes of the latest Work Programme Setting Workshop meeting, which all elected members are invited to. These are regular meetings, and they set the work that the committee will be doing over the coming months and year. This report is for information only, and I'd like to invite Rose Cross, Policy Committee Officer, to introduce and outline this report. Rose.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair mentioned, this is the 6-monthly update. So we are now bringing a report after each of the work programme setting workshops that happen every 6 months. These are open to all elected members to come and discuss policy suggestions. Members had the opportunity to provide suggestions both in the meeting and beforehand, and these were then discussed within each policy committee. The committee's forward plan was also reviewed, and people were offered the opportunity to review and discuss policy development ideas.
Thank you very much, Rose. So first of all, I'd like to thank members for your input and your involvement in this work. I'm particularly pleased that we agreed to include an asset management policy as part of the work that we'll be developing over the next few months and years. So that's a really crucial piece of work. It's not a very exciting title, perhaps, but it really is. It's a chance for us to create the overarching strategy by which we make decisions about all of our housing assets, including a whole range of issues, including the work that we do to improve our homes, including estate regeneration, a whole range of different areas, and they'll all be included within this work. And we're going to be doing a lot of development work with members of this committee to create that strategy over the next few weeks and months as well. So we'll be really grateful for your involvement in that. I'd like to allow an opportunity for comments and questions from members. Councillor Al-Maghrabi.
Thank you, Chair. So my first question is, will the Article 4 review prioritize community preservation or developer convenience?
Thank you, Councillor Al-Maghrabi. So Article 4 directions are an element of planning policy, which falls under the responsibility of the Economy and Skills Committee. So what we did at the workshop is we referred that recommendation to that committee. I don't have an update on what that committee is doing. Does anyone in the room have that? I don't think we do. It's on the forward plan for that committee, I'm told. Great, thank you. Councillor Eddy.
Very briefly, what I thought was helpful, unlike the first one we had, where you had to be present, obviously one appreciates members have other commitments, however committed they are to this. And some of us serve on more than one policy committee. But the fact that every group and every member could actually put forward their views in writing.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
I want to pick up on the vehicle dwelling. So, I mean, a couple of meetings ago, we said that we were going to have a report back at each meeting on vehicle dwelling. We've not got that. I mean, I'm not too fussed about it. But I haven't had replies to emails to John Smith following residents' meetings that we've had. We've got a proposed action plan. I've kind of repeatedly tried to ask what policy it is that's being updated. There's been a lot of talk about consultation, but no clarity on what's actually being consulted on. And I think, you know, there is very significant concern about a lack of sufficient focus on this. And I think we would really like some more systematic feedback, wouldn't we?
Thank you, Jerome. That's noted. Yeah, there is a lot of work ongoing on this at the moment. I think it's worth saying that there is an existing policy relating to the management of encampments on the highway. The policy that we're in the process of developing will be much more comprehensive than that. But yeah, let's...
Chair, you've got those requests in writing. If you could feedback in writing, that'd be much appreciated.
Will do. Thank you. Thanks very much. Councillor Logan.
Just a question on item 10 in this list, which is around place-based approaches, which I think is intended as a kind of general opportunity to develop local initiatives. There are probably lots of different ones, I assume. Or maybe I've just not understood it, but I think that's what it is. What I wanted to highlight is in Thilwood, we've just gone live with the local lettings policy. Thank you to the department for working on that and getting that across the line, but particularly in your area, Paul. that's something residents have wanted for some time, and it's great to have it in place. And I think that builds on a couple of other examples in areas like Lockleys and Lawrence Weston. Is that the kind of thing that you envisage being developed in other communities?
Yeah, Sonia.
So the neighbourhood working is a little broader than just the issue around neighbourhood plans. Although we'll be developing neighbourhood plans where they are, where they're being requested and we can evidence demand for them. The neighbourhood working actually is a council-wide priority, and it's part of the transformation approach. I'm the exec sponsor for that piece of work, and so I'm also working with colleagues in adult social care and children's services, and we're just looking more broadly around how we deliver services within our neighbourhoods. The neighbourhood approach that we take, how present we are within our communities. We're anchor organisations, but in some of our areas we're not as present as perhaps we could be. It also, I think, reflects some of the changes in national policies, particularly around the recent publication of the Neighbourhood Health Plan. So we'll also be working with external partners to see what are the opportunities for us to be much more present in our neighbourhoods, and how do we deliver services locally alongside another piece of work that's happening around what we call the front door, which is how do we improve accessibility to our services digitally as well, because actually we're a little bit mono-channel when it comes to how our residents can engage with us as a local authority.
Thank you. And on local lettings policies, I don't know if Paul, would you like to come in on our approach to local lettings policies? I mean, I think in general, I think it's fair to say that where those are developed, they're always developed with the involvement of local residents and key stakeholder organisations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're a good point now to reflect on the progress of the existing local lettings policies. So we've got, like you said, Rob, three main ones in the city in Lawrence Weston, Lockleys and Philwood now. There was previously an ambition to roll them out to further areas, and I believe that's what we still want to do. But I think it's a good opportunity to take stock, look at how it's working, and then develop our plans further.
Okay. Shall we bring some work on that to this committee?
Absolutely, happy to. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious of time. I can see a lot of hands on this item, but if it's all right, I would like us to move on because we do have a very packed agenda, as I've said. So I'm going to move on to our next item now, if that's okay. Thank you. So the officer recommendation for this report is to note the work programme update, and that's it. So our next item, agenda item 12, is to implement a customer-centred target operating model. This report presents the findings of the report by neutrality and to note the development and implementation of a target operating model. This is a non-key decision and the report is for noting. I'm going to invite Claire Gibb, who is Interim Director of Transformation and Building Safety, to introduce and outline the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The main findings of the neutrality report is the need to implement decision-making processes that place our resident at the heart of the service. This will involve a rebalancing of resources to ensure that we have the correct people in the correct areas. The target operating model is a look at how we work, who does the work, competencies, and the structures and the tools we need to do the work properly. I don't intend to go through the report line by line, but I want to highlight to committee the following issues. The first issue being that this is not proposed to be a reduction in resources. It's about using the resources we have, but potentially redeploying and re-looking at how we do rather than what we do. The second thing I wish to highlight is that this is going to affect all of property services. The neutrality report concentrated on repairs and maintenance, but in the management response to that, I quickly concluded that we have to look at housing holistically, in that how do we take into account occupancy, how do we take into account estates issues, how do we take into account housing management issues. The view on Gilton House demonstrates how do we communicate these decisions. And so as a result, I'd like the committee to note that this is not just going to be a repairs and maintenance target operating model. This is going to be a service and customer-led review to ensure that we deliver to the needs and the aspirations of the council, and also that our residents help shape how we deliver. I'm going to go slightly off-piste. This is a part of the larger council transformation programme. So we will be getting support from colleagues in project management, HR, finance, because the driving guideline is if we can make efficiency savings without losing resources, let's do it, because the cost of providing the service is part of the budget of providing the service. So if we can reduce the provision costs, by definition, we ease the stress on the HRA response budgets. So the report's quite self-explanatory. I'm happy to take any questions. Please be assured that we would be using tried and tested transformation protocols. We will be communicating with colleagues, unions, other stakeholders, and we have appropriate provision in place to make sure that we deliver it in accordance with the council objectives and behaviours.
Thank you very much, Claire. Now I'm going to ask the committee for their questions and comments, and I'm going to start with Councillor Al-Maghrabi.
I have a two-part question right here, if that's all right. So the first part of the question is this a digital first hotel being used to justify staff like us? And the second part will like, how will this restructure improve services for digitally excluded people, so that might be older people, blind people, etc. Thank you.
Started to look at how many people we have. I have started to discuss with the managers and unions. We can't afford more people, but the ask is that we have to do more. So because I can't afford to increase my staff complement, I need to work with the existing staff complement, which I'm being told is under-resourced. So I do not anticipate staff cuts. I do anticipate people slightly changing what they do and how they do it. So obviously, if you're asking somebody to change what they do and how they do it, you have to be very mindful that the ask is equitable, meets equality standards, and also that we don't potentially overlook talent because they don't fit the mould. So it's going to be something that we're going to have to do very carefully, and there will be disruption, but we are not looking to reduce staff resources. We're looking to use staff resources more effectively.
Sonia.
I'll take the question if that's all right on the digital first approach. So we're not proposing to take a digital first approach, but we do recognise that we do need to provide some digital options, because at the moment there are, we all expect to kind of transact with a range of organisations at times that suit us. We're very dependent on people phoning us through our customer contact centre, so we want to improve choice. What we do need to do, though, is we mentioned earlier that a significant number of our repairs are raised as emergencies. That really gets in the way of delivering great service, because it fills up all of our diary appointments and it makes it very difficult to deliver routine. But our colleagues in the customer service team currently don't have any diagnostic tools, so actually they're just making judgments. What NEC will do is deliver us better diagnostics so that we identify the repairs much better, and also it will give us better data so we can understand the nature of the repairs coming through, so that we can better plan to deliver them in a more effective way. Our lack of systems also hamper us in terms of understanding productivity. We can't fully understand productivity at the moment, but we can see significant failure demand coming through the service. And if we can address that failure demand, we can reduce our costs. But we're not proposing to reduce costs by cutting our internal workforce. It's if our internal workforce can do more, then we'll be less reliant on external contractors.
Thanks very much. Councillor Shabalala. I'm trying to share things out so that you've spoken less than some of the other members.
Yeah, thanks. Caught me off guard. I was just waiting for tears. This is amazing. I mean, and I'm just thinking of this level of transformation, which is customer focused, because the customer complains, feeling that this is, the council, there should be so many staff, but they're not necessarily getting the right speed of service, like what's going on? And this feels like the solution. It also makes one wonder what's been going on. So can you just give us some nuggets of what's been going on?
I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here. We have been so focused on treating the symptoms, we've forgotten the cause. And by carefully reorganizing the structure and by carefully challenging the cultures that we've had, we can actually start to have conversations with the householders, with residents, with advocacy groups, with other stakeholders, to say, this is what the consumer standard says we've got to do. How do you want it done? And as soon as we change that mindset to how would I feel if I was receiving this service, we're going to be able to tackle a lot of the underlying problems that you raise and that councillors get in their wards inquiries. I'll be honest, large organisation, internal workforce, perhaps say we've not given it as much scrutiny as a council because we weren't regulated. But boiling down, it is about, if I'm doing something for my mother-in-law, is she going to be satisfied with it?
And I love what Sonia was saying there about, watching productivity has not been an easy thing. And that goes for residents too, who feel like the productivity is very low or not visible. And I think when you're able to see levels of productivity, residents will also see it, the confidence levels will also rise. But my question to you, though, is this will also have a significant impact on other committee budgets in terms of our agreements. How would we manage some of those? Because it's taking quite a housing first approach to what we do and prioritizing housing and prioritizing our residents, but that's also got a knock-on impact. I welcome the impact, but how are you going to manage it?
This is why it's linked to the corporate transformation programme. In short, if we deliver a more efficient repair service, we will reduce complaints. That will reduce impact on legal services. It will give us space to have better joint working with adult and children's social care. I think of a council as being a one-stop shop or tell us once type organisation. And quite frankly, housing is often judged by how long it takes to repair the leaking tap. So it will drive a lot of change, hopefully. I'm hoping we will actually deliver efficiency measures that will allow us to do more with what we've already got.
Thank you very much. We've overrun slightly on this item, my sort of mental timetable. So I'm gonna, if it's all right, I'm gonna go to Councillor Freeman because you haven't spoken much yet, and if you could keep your comment quite brief. That would be helpful.
Very
Thank
small
you.
questions, hopefully. Just trying to understand, obviously, sort of, I'm subbing today, so I haven't got a good grip on everything, but just trying to understand the scale of when you said it's going to affect a lot of staff, what numbers are we talking about? And then the other very quick question really is about how this has gone down so far with the conversations that you've had with managers. Is this something that people are welcoming and you know, keen to get involved in?
We're talking over 1,000 staff in the property side of housing, and a further 800 or so in the housing and estates side of housing. But I would argue that it will have an impact wider with the council, with social work, etc. So far, when discussing it with my management teams and with the colleagues in housing and estates management, we can't wait to get started because we're hoping that it will give us a culture change as well as a performance change.
Thank you. I think Sonia wants to come in briefly.
Just super quick, just to say that we will need to do a lot of engagement with our colleagues, and once approved here, we can start to run some roadshows so that we can start to hopefully get some excitement from colleagues in terms of what we're trying to achieve here. What I would say is a little bit of a health warning. Having done major change in a number of organisations, what we may see is performance will dip whilst we make the changes, which is why we're seeing this as being more than a 12-month project.
Thanks very much. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm going to move us on now. So, I'm going to read out the officer recommendations next. So these are that the Committee for Homes and Housing Delivery notes that the preferred option is option 3, which will respond to current delivery challenges and develop a customer journey approach to service delivery rather than designed to only meet repairs and maintenance delivery needs. To note the actions taken to date in the table in the evidence base, which is shown in italics, and the next steps shown in bold. And note that a further update report will be brought back to the committee during 2026. Thank you. Agenda item 13 is the Bristol City Council Cladding Remediation Programme Acceleration. This report is to seek approval to apply for Homes England funding to implement the Accelerated Cladding Remediation Programme. This will involve delivering a subset of the existing buildings through a new delivery model that enhances existing provision with external resource, using efficient processes and procuring an appropriate supply chain that's both fit for purpose and value for money. The report also seeks approval to appoint Turner & Townsend to provide project management support for the pilot, also fully funded by Homes England. This is a key decision because it involves a spend of over £500,000. And we're going to return to Claire Gibb, Interim Director of Transformation and Building Safety, to introduce and outline this report. Claire.
Again, I don't propose to go through the report in full, but I would like to highlight 4 key elements. The change from a whole block approach where we put a scaffold up and we do everything and then we leave is likely to deliver cladding remediation by 2042. The central government guidelines is that it needs to be delivered by 2030, and this approach will deliver it by 2031. It does mean that from 2031 to 2042, some blocks will require the scaffold to go back up in order to do the other external work. And this is a completely new way of working. But when I looked at how long scaffold is up for major works and how long scaffold is up for cladding remediation, the overall time per block that a scaffold would be in situ is being reduced between 9 and 12 months. So instead of a scaffold being up for 3 years, it will go up for 9 months, it will come down, and then it will go up for another year. Homes England have indicated that this is a much better model to maximise the funding that they can make available. We have had funding applications challenged because Homes England are saying, but you're using that scaffold to do other things at the same time, therefore we're reducing the central government money. And also the fact that Homes England are under considerable pressure from the Minister and also the Combined Mayoral Authority. They have agreed to fund a pilot which will actually comprise of 6 blocks. And this will test proof of concept, because by having a programmed approach, this is a meaty piece of work. And specialist contractors have already started to drop in expressions of interest. When we have done it on a block-by-block basis, we have had difficulty accessing specialist contractors. The delegated authority is requested so that Sonia can, on behalf of the council, keep a watching eye in line with Section 151 officer approvals, and we will use the council's grant allocation audit protocols to ensure that we are fully and transparent in the use of the public purse. The other thing I'd like the committee to note is that this is actually going to result in a net gain to the HRA budget, because this is additional central government funding wrapped up to optimise our funding application success, that Homes England are very happy to support, because it means that their grant allocation process is streamlined, and it means that the housing improvement plan and the housing investment programme can be reallocated for other needs for an ageing stock profile. So that's all I have to say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I'm now going to ask members of the committee for their comments and questions. Councillor Logan.
That's great. So there's obviously work to do here, and there is new government funding available, and we should access it, and we should do what you're doing, which is to think about how we can remodel our response so that we achieve the maximisation of that, both that we maximise the income that we receive and our ability to deliver it within the timescales. Well done. If my last comment was about audit, my next one's about procurement, which is there's quite a good section in the reports and the advice report from the advisors on constrained supply chains. So that is definitely a thing. It is difficult to do construction and refurbishment in Bristol. It's not easy to find the contractors to do that within that timescale. So what the report says is actually you've got a couple of frameworks that you use. You're thinking of using some other ones. You're adding the SCAPE framework to your existing framework, but not replacing your existing framework. Broadly, I think that's the right approach. Something else I would ask or put to you to think about is, depending on the size of the jobs available, it's not clear to me what the value of each job is. If some of these jobs are themselves below threshold, you could do a quotations exercise that would enable you to go to maybe 3 or 4 contractors that you work with 3 of them and one that you don't work with. Because one of the challenges with getting diversification of supply chain is you tend to see the same contractors for the same things. So it's one thing that you have to achieve if you're doing those exercises is finding a way of bringing in contractors that you haven't worked with, as well as ones that you have. So it wasn't clear to me if that's what you're thinking of doing, but if you're thinking of ways of doing that, I think that will be welcome.
Turner and Townsend's procurement specialists have been working very closely with our procurement team, And as a result, we are able to actually access considerably more approved procurement compliant networks and platforms than we do as Bristol as itself. The main benefit, which is also a risk, is that we're pulling together a programme. So at the moment we're concentrating on what happens if it goes well, and also what happens if it doesn't go as well as we expect, and how do we ensure that Bristol is at the heart of the decision-making process, which is why Homes England agreed that the grant would come to the council, and then the council would procure rather than direct procurement by Homes England.
No. Thank you. Councillor Gooch.
Yeah, seems like a no-brainer. Do we think, using this model, that we will get all of the cladding sorted by 2030?
If I use 2030-31 financial year, yes, but to be perfectly honest, no. 2031 is when we'll get it done. But we've been working closely with the Combined Mayoral Authority, because they're also looking at this, and Bristol's actually ahead of the pack for West of England. So we're sharing our experience, but no, we're not going to meet the central government deadline, but we will meet it by 2031.
Councillor Eddy.
I would have been disappointed if Councillor Logan didn't invoke procurement, which he invariably does. But seriously, actually, I agree with everything he said, and Councillor Gooch did too. It's a no-brainer. It's a good news story, and let's get on with it. And I'm sure with your customary vigour, of course, we will approach it at pace.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to move us on then to the vote on this item. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'll read out the officer recommendations in the report. And these are as follows. That the Committee for Homes and Housing Delivery notes the CSS support review carried out in October 2024 and the report on findings. Notes the work completed to date by Turner and Townsend, funded by Homes England, to develop a toolkit to accelerate Bristol City Council's cladding remediation programme to try to meet central government timescales. Note that Homes England has set aside grant funding of circa £5 million to forward fund the delivery of the cladding remediation programme, and that this funding will pay for the pilot. Then to approve the appointment of Turner and Townsend to project manage a pilot of 5 blocks to test proof of concept and to test the emerging toolkit. To approve the use of Bristol City Council as the professional client project manager, which is option 2 as set out in the report. To authorise the Executive Director of Housing, in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee, subject to securing the necessary funding from Homes England, to take all necessary steps to implement the various work streams which will be delivered as part of the toolkit, including procuring all necessary goods, services and works contracts and other agreements, and agreeing terms for any relevant contract arrangements, funding agreements, notwithstanding that any of these may, whether by value or otherwise, comprise a key decision. To authorise the Executive Director of Housing, in consultation with the Section 151 officer, to secure and utilise funding to support the cladding remediation acceleration programme, including authority to agree the terms of any grants estimated to be in the region of £700,000 per building, and to agree that one of the pilot deliverables will be to review funding forecasts to check via the pilot if the allocation of circa £700,000 per block will cover all costs and amend grant applications accordingly. I move those recommendations, noting that there are 3 for noting and 5 for approval. May I have a second?
Chair, sorry. I think there are also 4 contractual recommendations at the top of page 161.
That's right. Oh, you want to do them together? Sorry, I was advised that we would take those separately. So, okay. So before we go on to that, then, there are 4 further contractual recommendations. As I say, originally I was advised that we'd take these separately, but I've been advised now that we should take them together. So those are as follows. That the committee authorises the Executive Director of Housing to invoke any subsequent extensions or variations specifically defined in the contracts being awarded up to the maximum budget envelope outlined in this report. Approves the pilot programme, also fully funded by Homes England, to test the results of this study and demonstrate proof of concept. Approves, subject to the successful delivery of the pilot, the use of the pilot toolkit to deliver the remainder of the programme via the successful pilot supply chain, allowing for break clauses if performance deteriorates. And fourthly, authorises the Executive Director of Housing, in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee, to take all steps required to deliver the remaining programme, subject to the successful delivery of the pilot. Okay, so thank you very much, Councillor Redding. So now I'm going to put that to the vote, and in voting I would ask members to clearly indicate your vote by hand. May I first ask for votes for the recommendation? And can I check that that's unanimous? Yep. Great. So, I declare that the result of the vote is that those recommendations are unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Let's move on now to agenda item 14, which is the 2024-25 Affordable Housing Delivery Report. This report provides an update on affordable housing delivery in the city and is for information only. I'd like to invite Louise Davidson, Head of Housing Delivery, to introduce and outline this report.
Thank you, Chair. This committee will have received the quarterly KPI stats on affordable housing delivery through corporate reporting, but those figures don't give you the real flavour of affordable homes that are being delivered across the city. So this report seeks to do just that by breaking down the completions and starts for affordable housing by tenure, delivery route, unit size and the like. The report shows the wide range of affordable and specialist homes that are being delivered in Bristol and the number of delivery partners we are working with, highlighting the role that both our direct delivery programmes have in meeting need, but also how important our registered and specialist provider partners are in delivering homes for Bristol. The headlines from the report show that 535 new affordable homes completed in 24-25, and that we started 555 new homes on site. We have a phenomenal 1,785 affordable homes currently being delivered in the city, which will complete over the next few years. We're also supporting a pipeline of almost 2,000 new affordable homes, and members will recall that the key priority of the interim affordable housing delivery plan is to protect, progress and grow that pipeline of new delivery. Whilst this report is a fairly dry reflection on the number of affordable homes being delivered for Bristol, we must remember that each of these new homes is making a difference to the lives of people in greatest housing need. So we have also shown how last year's rented delivery has been allocated, with nearly 90% of the homes being allocated to bands 1 and 2 on home choice, including 66 to homeless households. We'll come back to committee with a mid-year position on completions and starts for 25-26, and at that time would be happy to drill down into other areas of interest as we also capture data, for example, on design and accessibility standards and energy rating, or members might like to look into, for example, how shared ownership is meeting need in the city. Open to suggestions of what else you would like to talk about when we come back. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Louise. I'm now going to invite questions and comments from members of the committee. Councillor Peat.
So I appreciate that. I hope you all appreciate that I've reserved pretty much all my questions for this item so that you don't you have to hear my voice too much. So my first major question is that only 28% of the properties are at a social rent level, with the majority being affordable rent or shared ownership, as mentioned in the slide presentation. Though these levels are improving, I want to know, how are we going to keep up with this momentum?
So I think the issue of what tenure is produced, it's partly down to viability, it's partly down to the route to delivery, i.e. where those homes are coming from, and it's about funding. What we are seeing now is a real national priority through Homes England and the government around social rent delivery. Those numbers are going up, and we are starting to see a decline in that affordable rent delivery coming forward. So yes, priority nationally for social rent, but I think across the city we're going to continue to see a range of different tenures come forward, simply because of the nature of what is happening in the built environment in Bristol.
Thank you. Is it all right if I just go for my next questions, and then I've got one question on the next item. You won't have to hear from me again. So, will you ensure that all housing committee members are invited to future HRA sites, and will visits be put in place for the committee members for the schemes you have already visited and attempted to take credit for, Barry?
I think in general, I think it would probably be a bit excessive to invite every single member of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee to every single site visit.
Well, they do
That would
like
be an
the
awful lot of
DCA
people.
committees. Like we all go on site visits for planning for stuff.
That's a
So
yeah. That's for separate purposes, though, isn't it? That's so that those committees can make decisions about those planning applications. But I mean, I think it's something that we'll take away and we'll look at it. What we do, what our practice is. So the protocol is that that for events like that, so celebrations of new delivery, media events, things like that, the protocol is that the chair of the relevant committee is invited, and that's across the board, that's across the council. Where the chair is unavailable, then the vice chair substitutes. What I've always said, and what I'll continue to say, is that I would expect ward members to be invited to every such event as well. And so we're going to continue to do that. Certainly.
There was a case in Rob's ward on Monday where we attended. Both Lisa and Rob were invited. Lisa was able to make it.
Thank you.
Okay, and then my third question is, so we are facing an ever-accelerating housing crisis, and we are behind on delivering affordable housing by 22%. And of course, in our budget, Labour excluded, the council voted to scrap schemes that would have built 2,000 council homes. We all know that scarcity of affordable homes will drive up rents in the private sector. So my question is, will the Green Party be honouring the manifesto commitment to increase the targets to 1,000 affordable homes a year, or are we accepting that that's not going to happen?
Okay, thank you, Zoe. So, I mean, I'm sure nobody needs reminding of the state that the housing revenue account was in when we took on this administration, and the need to invest in our existing homes and in the safety of our residents has to be paramount. That, of course, necessitated some difficult decisions around which homes the housing revenue account was able to buy. What that does not mean is that any of those homes has been scrapped. So what we've actually done is we've worked with our partners, with registered providers in particular, so that we can continue to bring forth schemes that will be delivering very large numbers of social rent homes and other forms of affordable tenure. Indeed, the highest level of delivery in over a generation. And I think it's really important that we continue to do that. We continue to make that point as well, because I think there's been a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, particularly I would say coming from the Labour group, about what that actually means for affordable housing delivery for the city. So yeah, we are very, very committed to increasing the supply of social rent homes in particular. And as Louise has indicated, we also have now a change of tone and a change of emphasis at national government, and we're going to be working very closely with our partners in Homes England and our other partners to deliver those homes. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add.
I would just respond to that to say that obviously during the budget discussions we provided a fully costed alternative, so these houses could have stayed within the council pipeline, and it's also not confirmed that our partners will take on all the projects that we're scrapping, especially for developments that have fewer than 50 properties, because it's just not profitable for them to do so.
So I think Louise might want to come in on this, but I think really what we are doing right now is, in the context of very constrained budgets, And as I said, the challenges of really bringing our existing homes and the service that we provide for our existing residents up to a decent standard where it's been allowed to fall off for many years under previous administrations, most recently Labour administration, unfortunately. We're having to take those decisions, but we're doing them in a really pragmatic way, and we're doing them in a way that means that we can maximise that delivery through whatever means we can.
Have you managed to secure a registered provider for Hengrove Phase 1B that was decided not to be taken forward by the HRA and behind closed doors, a decision by you and the Vice Chair?
So I think for every scheme that we are in development with specifically with Gorham Homes, we will be in a position to make announcements about those schemes and where partners become when we've found a partner for those and when we've made agreements, when those agreements have actually been made. And you've seen that, I think, recently with the Baltic Wolf development. But Louise, would you like to comment?
Just to add that, Councillor Pete, the Dovercourt affordable homes that were coming to the HRA, they are now in contract with Curo, so one of our Homes West partners. Abri are about to go into contract for the new Fossway units. We are aware that Sovereign SNG are very, very committed and publicly committed to taking the affordable homes at Baltic Wharf, and Vistry, who are going to be the local, the limited partner with Gorham up at Hengrove 1B, have just started going out to the RP sector for expressions of interest. So as Councillor Parsons says, we're not ready yet for them to say it is this organisation we're going to work with, but I'm aware that there is quite a lot of interest from across the affordable housing sector, both local partners and partners who are from outside of the council area.
Thanks. Councillor Shabalala.
Louise, thank you very much for the report. And I just wanted to focus a bit on the equalities impact of the report. It's good to see that we are aware what the challenges are in terms of accessibility issues for disabled residents. And I'd like a better understanding of how are we then aiming to address accessibility issues for wheelchair, people in mental health when actually doing all these schemes. The second part towards this equalities impact is that there's a reliance on ONS data, and that obviously comes every 10 years. So clearly when we can start having our own hyperlocal insight, that would really help to see what we can't really see that much. How are you addressing the fact that you don't have that nuanced data, and how would you, if you had it, what difference would it make? And then the second part to the question is, how are we prioritizing our disabled residents in the built environment?
Okay, so take this in backwards, if you like, Councillor. So when we're looking at delivering supported homes, we won't just be looking at national data from ONS and what have you. We'll be working very, very closely with our commissioning partners, responding to the need that was identified and in the supported housing delivery plan, for example. So at the very, very local scheme level, absolutely addressing the priorities that have already been identified by the council. And we've got some really good close working relationships now with adult social services, with Paul's team from a temporary accommodation point of view, and actually now working more closely with children's services than we've ever done before to address that really specialist need. In terms of the wider accessibility piece, there is work that we're doing and do to identify very, very specific need when we're looking at a scheme ourselves. For example, I was out at the New Kingsland scheme a while ago, met a young lad who's moved into one of our disabled wheelchair units there, and it's fundamentally made such a huge impact on his life. So again, at a scheme level, really trying to match up what we know about those schemes and the need more locally. That is tempered by the topography, the viability, the design of the site itself. So there's always that balance to play about meeting really local identified need and what that site can deliver. And that remains a challenge for anyone developing housing in the city. We will strive through planning to secure the policy requirement for wheelchair, and that continues to be something that is articulated in the plan policies. And what we can do, as I've said, is if you'd like us to do a bit more of a deep dive into the design standards of what's being built, we could come back when we do the next update with a bit of information, but also maybe picking up on some of those challenges as well. So it's less of a dry, factual, just stats thing for you.
Absolutely, because I think sorry, Chair, if we're able to understand the planning element of it, how that is then kind of enforced or support or influence development, but then how that supports Paul's work with people moving on from temporary accommodation and the needs that they have, mental health, disability, so forth. I think that would be really great to kind of see how that streamline of work comes together and that provision.
I've got Councillor Eddy next, and then Councillor Freeman, and then I'm going to move us on.
Before addressing this report, can I just briefly underscore something you said, Chairman, to demonstrate in concrete terms how the fact the council or Gorham Homes may not be actually doing some of these partners are instead. In a week's time, I'm subbing on DCB committee, which has the variation from Sovereign's scheme at Borset Wolf. So we are seeing tangible, practical ways forward. Louise, can I say thank you for this report? And it gives me a public chance to say thank you for your leadership and the team, the hard work they do. I think you described at some point in your introduction this report as a bit dry. Well, actually, I think the case studies do add to it and enliven it. And they also demonstrate to me not just the numbers, but actually the types of new innovative housing, social housing, including reducing heating bills, making it more sustainable, addressing the climate emergency, etc. And I notice it rang a bell here. One of your examples is MacArthur's Yard. And I do recall 20 years ago when I chaired the Central Planning Committee, I passed demolition and redevelopment there by my casting vote. Fortunately, it didn't go ahead because, in my view, this Guinness scheme is better.
Thank you, Councillor Eddy. Councillor Freeman.
Just got a very brief comment, really following on from what Richard has said, that the case studies do really bring it to light. And I know one of the residents that is in your new Lawrence Weston site, and they moved from a building that was literally falling apart to the point that, there were injuries happening, into one of the new flats, maisonettes, whatever you want to call it. They've got a condition which means in the future they may need to use a wheelchair. The new building is lovely as it is, but is future-proofed so that if she needs lifting equipment or whatever, then that's in place. And it's just made a huge, huge difference to how she lives and how she feels about herself, and then how she goes on to, for other parts of her life. She's very young, so it's having that impact on somebody early on in their lives is huge. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to move us on now. So the officer recommendation in this report is that the Committee for Homes and Housing Delivery no report. Thank you very much. Now, our next item, agenda item 15, is the Housing Revenue Account Asset Evaluation Policy. Now, we've received an amendment, a late amendment to this report from the Labour Group. I was only made aware of that during this meeting, so in order to make sure that members have a bit of a chance to absorb that and have a bit of discussion if needed, I'm going to propose that we take a 5-minute break now before moving on to that item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for your patience. Agenda item 15 is the Housing Revenue Account Asset Evaluation Policy. So this report is to seek approval and sign off for the Housing Revenue Account Asset Review Policy, Evaluation Policy rather, and process, attached as Appendix A. The development of this policy for the appraisal and potential disposal of HRA assets made to Council in February 2025 during the 25-26 budget setting process. This report is to seek delegated authority for the Executive Director of Housing in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee and the Section 151 Officer to take final decisions related to HRA asset disposals, mirroring the approach approved in February 2025 in relation to the HRA budget. Members will be aware that an updated version of the report referred to at item 15 on the agenda as Housing Revenue Account Asset Review Policy has been published. Following a workshop held on Monday the 14th of July with elected members to talk through the approach being taken with respect to the appraisal and potential disposal of some housing revenue account assets, some suggested changes were proposed to the original papers. In summary, the updates requested were to review the title of the policy, which has been changed to Housing Revenue Account Asset Evaluation Policy, to include reference to wider community stakeholders in the pro forma, which is Appendix D within the policy document. This has been added. And the published updated report reflects these suggested changes. Now, as I've said, we've received an amendment to this report, which we will discuss later. But first of all, I'm going to invite Leisha Wilson, who is Policy and Engagement Manager, and Dave Clark, who's Policy and Practice Officer, to introduce and outline this report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to do a bit of an introduction, some of which you've covered already. When the HRA budget was approved at full council in February 2025, a commitment was made to bring a policy detailing how the Housing Directorate would evaluate and in some cases dispose of poor performing HRA assets back to this committee for approval. The HRA asset evaluation policy presented to the committee today is in response to that commitment. The principal aim of the policy is to ensure that the ongoing financial sustainability of the HRA by identifying assets that are no longer meeting the service or business need and where the capital receipt generated could be better used elsewhere to support objectives of the HRA business plan. The HRA currently has a number of non-residential properties, so these would include things like office, shop fronts, garages and open parcels of land. These commercial and non-residential assets will be prioritised for review and evaluation first. However, there are also some residential properties which are currently expensive to run, maintain and improve, but would generate capital receipts if sold. There is a commitment in the policy that for every home disposed of as part of the asset evaluation, we will, over the life of the HRA business plan, ensure a new home is built to replace it. This will be a targeted process and is aimed at providing the council with the best value for money outcome, whilst retaining the greatest number of the highest quality stock we can. The policy will be reviewed in 18 months to ensure ongoing alignment with the revised HRA asset management strategy once that's in place and approved. The ask of the committee today is to approve the HRA asset review policy, asset evaluation policy, change of name, and to grant approval for delegated authority to take final decisions related to the review and potential disposal of HRA assets, as said earlier, in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee and the Section 151 Officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to open the floor for questions and comments. Bearing in mind, of course, that we have received an amendment, I would suggest that we reserve discussion of that amendment until we take that part of the paper. I'm not seeing any hands up. No, I've got two hands now. Councillor Thomas.
Just saying that the briefing session on this, the asset review briefing on Monday, was very helpful and gave a much clearer sense of how this works as a build up to the asset strategy in the longer term, which I think would be the right place for your proposal to come in. And it would have been good to have seen some Labour members there on Monday. This is the right place to have been asking these sorts of questions rather than bringing this sort of amendment 5 minutes in before this meeting. So, you know, my argument would, you know, I'm going to vote against that amendment, not on the basis that I don't think there's some merit to it, but it's the wrong place at the wrong time, and you guys should have been at that briefing meeting if you wanted to raise it.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Eddy.
Pretty much going to agree with Jerome, although I'm not going to say there's any merit in Labour's proposal. But equally so, I really would like to see, I know many people have commitments or day jobs or whatever, and it's not always possible to attend briefings, but I'd like to see the Labour members, to be fair to Al, he arrived late from work actually, he did have work commitments, but it is galling to actually have things like, for example, before the budget meeting, we had 2 finance briefings from officers, Martin, and not a single Labour member attended, so I welcome the report as amended, of course. I think it's vital we have this sort of strategy which allows us to look at our asset base and to make it work for us. Those, you know, work as well as possible, those which no longer meet our needs, possibly to dispose of and to acquire where appropriate. And it seems this is the right interim strategy until the larger, longer-term strategy is devised.
Thank you. Councillor Peat.
So I'd just like to say that I respectfully disagree with Jerome and Richard, simply because if it can't be brought here where it's transparently able to be debated to the public, then why should it be brought within a secret briefing, so to speak? But that's not my question. My question is, can the chair confirm that even if this amendment passes or doesn't, if the council is just, if there is no risk that the council will just sell off voided properties to avoid having to bring them in line with housing safety laws, especially since we are in an underspend, so we should have the revenue to bring them up to standard.
Thank you, Councillor Peat. I mean, I think we can very much confirm that that's not, that's not the case, and that's not the intention of the policy. Really, as the paper demonstrates, what we're attempting to do here is to provide a really comprehensive set of criteria for making evaluation decisions on some of our most challenging properties, which, as you can imagine, in a state the size of the housing revenue accounts properties, is, there are many. There's a number of properties within that estate that are extremely challenging for one reason or another to maintain as part of our portfolio, and we think it's absolutely right that we should have a dynamic approach to managing the assets that we have, with the aim that we are providing for the needs of our residents above all else. And I think maybe I could go over to Dave, who might be able to add some more detail about how those decisions are proposed to be made under this policy.
There's quite an extensive review process, which we have an asset review panel, which has been made up of various members of Housing Directorate, but also the members of the Corporate Landlord Services. And they would look at various factors like finance, location, demand, or social aspects of the property. And as part of the consultation, it would also then go, would they take consultation from the area committees, so members would actually have some input there before any kind of final decision is made to dispose of the property. So there's a large area where data is collected and evidence is collected, and we seek stakeholder views before any disposal decision is made. So.
Thank you,
I
Tim.
have some follow-ups.
Councillor,
If that's
pardon?
okay. I have some follow-ups if that's okay.
I'm going to go to Councillor Gooch first, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank
Councillor Gooch.
I'd like to commend Councillor Pete on her commitment to the committee system and how deeply she wants to get involved in every decision and visit, and would suggest that maybe the Labour group has a word with their party leader about taking away our right to decide how to govern ourselves in the city.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch. Councillor Pete.
So the assessment criteria annex refers to the cost of bringing properties up to the EPCC and reaching climate targets as a reason for disposing. Can members please provide a breakdown of the number of properties which are estimated to be sold, of which how many are being sold because we deem the capital cost of retrofitting it to EPCC too high?
Yeah, Sonia.
So we don't have a target list, so I can't provide that information. This report is setting out the steps that we will take to review our assets, to determine what the best options for them will be. And that's a normal part of a strategic asset management strategy, is that you take a look at your homes and also our non-residential properties as well, because we have a number of commercial assets across the piece. You look at all of the key component replacements you'll need to do over a set period of time. You'll also look at the income that's coming in, and you'll understand the financial performance of that asset. For a home, the additional thing that you will do, and indeed for the non-residential assets, is then you need to then look at what benefit are these properties giving for the community. So we may well decide that actually we will. In fact, it's likely that we will continue to have homes which have poor, what we call net present values, which means that actually the income coming in isn't covering the cost, but actually the social value for those assets is really significant for that community. So the asset appraisal model will identify that and say, yes, we know this doesn't work financially, but it's so important to the community, we need to keep it. Then actually the other thing that we have to do is, if we determine that the asset isn't working for the community and isn't working financially, we then look to see what the alternative uses are. What can we do with this asset to either make it stack up, or indeed to see if there are others in the communities who would have use for it. And that's part of a fully rounded asset appraisal process, which is what we're trying to agree the principles of here. And then the final one, which we need to consider, would be any kind of legal or regulatory constraints. Some of that might be how the home or the non-residential property was originally funded, and that will determine the route as well. Sometimes we have properties which may have been bought with funding which restricts their use, and so it restricts the alternative options for them. So we don't have a target list, so I wouldn't be able to tell you whether the plan was to dispose of those because we couldn't economically get them to EPCC, because that wouldn't be the only factor within the appraisal. It would be all of those other things as well.
Chairman, can I respectfully suggest we move to later?
Can I just ask
So
one more
we can
thing?
vote it down,
I would like to just say one more thing, which is, for example, domestic heat is one of the biggest carbon emitters in Bristol, and property developers don't get the same discounts as we do when it comes to building or retrofitting. Do you accept that selling properties that need to be retrofitted will may be politically construed as being lazy and just passing the buck for tackling a climate crisis?
And I think one thing that possibly is kind of lacking here is that what we're attempting to do here is to create, as Sonia's described, a sort of a normal asset management approach for our homes. What we've had up till now has been an anomalous situation where the council under the previous administration has neither invested in those homes nor made any proactive decisions about better uses for them. So what we're trying to do here is actually the opposite, I would say. It's actually much more proactive, and it's really kind of it's addressing the problems that have been allowed to build up under the previous administration. I'm going to move us on because we're running out of time for this meeting.
I've got a technical point, just a serious technical point.
Can we be very, very brief?
Yes, it's very brief.
Thank you.
I would appreciate if you can take back your remark of saying that we're having secret meetings. There's no secret meeting. The meeting A is recorded. B, everyone was sent notification. And because it's recorded, how can it be secret? Because you can go watch it yourself. No. You can't say that in the public domain like I am complicit to being in a secret meeting. There was no secret meeting. You just didn't attend it. So I'd appreciate if you can take that back.
I won't.
Okay. All right, let's move on. I'm now going to read out the officer recommendations in this report. And they are that the Committee for Homes and Housing Delivery agree and approve the Housing Revenue Account Asset Review Policy and Process, which is attached as Appendix A, and authorise the Executive Director of Housing in consultation, Asset Evaluation Policy and Process. Authorise the Executive Director of Housing in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee and the Section 151 officer to take decisions related to the disposals programme, including any decision that would otherwise require specific committee approval by virtue of it exceeding the key decision threshold of £500,000. I move those recommendations and I'd like to ask for a seconder, please.
I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Eddy. Now, as discussed previously, we've received an amendment to this paper, and so the process for that is I'm going to ask Councillor Peat in a minute to move that amendment. Then it will need to be seconded. Then we can have debate on that amendment, followed by a vote, and then finally we will vote on the paper, either amended or unamended. So. I believe we have the amendment text displayed on the screen, do we? I can't actually see it, my eyes aren't that good. But can I ask Councillor Peat to move that amendment, please?
I would like to move the amendment that would change paragraph 2 of the officer recommendations to say, in line with the disposal process for the general fund's assets, authorise the Executive Director of Housing in consultation with the Chair and the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee and Section 151 officer to take all steps required to dispose of assets only after the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee has approved each individual asset disposal, including those that do not exceed the key decision threshold of 500,000.
Thank you. May I have a seconder? Okay, Councillor Amagrabi. Right, we're going to have an opportunity to move on to question and discussion, but because, as indicated, most of us hadn't seen this paper until during this meeting, I'm going to go first to the Executive Director for Housing for some professional advice.
Thank you, Chair. In considering what advice to give to the committee, I've gone back and made some inquiries specifically around how the budget was set for this year. And Council approved on the 25th of February this year a budget which was predicated on or included proceeds from disposals totalling £4.9 million. And that budget, the failure to deliver that £4.9 million means that we will have a significant deficit in the HRA, which will see us having to re-look at the programme of planned works we already have in place in terms of delivering improvements to our homes within the city this year. My concern about the amendment is, given the cycle for committees in terms of the regularity of those, is that actually it will have a significant impact on our delivery of those disposals to support the delivery of the capital programme this year.
Thank you very much. So we're now going to move on to an opportunity for questions and debate about this amendment. I think I would probably say, from my point of view, that as Sonia has indicated, the difficulty with this amendment is that it would effectively scupper the entire policy for this year and therefore the housing revenue account budget, which would be a serious problem for our homes across the city. And I think I'd also note that the text about including properties that fall below the key decision threshold of £500,000 would be really sort of clogging up the agenda of this committee with decisions of a scale that are generally taken by officers as part of the usual delegations scheme. So I'm going to move on to an opportunity for brief debate, and I've got a sea of hands. I think, in fact, we may only have time for maybe sort of one or possibly two speeches in favour or against. So I'm going to go to Councillor Thomas first.
Thank you. I mean, I understand, Zoe, that you might not want to have attended the councillor briefing on Monday, and might have been reluctant to give up an hour on a Monday evening. But that would have been the right place to explore it, and also try and get other councillors on board. If it was a serious proposal, that's a chance to sort of talk with other councillors and explain your reasoning and also find out more. You're very keen on how important this committee is. If this committee is important, then it should be respected. And turning up with an amendment 5 minutes beforehand is not respectful. And doesn't give time for people to consider things. So, I mean, I think it draws the conclusion that actually you and your colleagues are trying to make a point and grab headlines rather than engage in this debate seriously. So I do think there might be some merits to sort of, careful review of disposals lists, but this is not the way to go about it. I'll vote against the amendment on that basis, not that I necessarily fully disagree with it, and please bring it back with more consideration in the future if you would like it to be properly considered.
Thank you. Councillor Peat.
So this is about bringing it in line with the general fund disposals. I don't understand why the HRA should be different. Is it Sonia? Is that your name? Yep. You said that the budget set a target of 4.9 million, but earlier you said that there are no targets for how many homes to dispose. How do you reconcile those two things? Barry said it'd scupper the plans, strategy and resources disposes of assets via committee, but their plans are not scuppered.
Thank you, Councillor Peat. Sonia, would you like to respond?
So I think actually what I said was there was no target list. So we don't have a list of homes that we are already considering for disposal. We were waiting for the outcome of this policy to do much of the work. We're also improving our data as part of our consumer standards programme. So the two are not irreconcilable. The budget had assumed capital receipts of £4.9 million, but there is no specific list of properties against which that money is placed.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch.
I think my view on this is a policy committee. It's for deciding policy. So whereas decisions around individual assets should be much more local issues, so local area committees are the places to actually look at those, involving the councillors whose wards they actually fall into. And I don't want this committee to get bogged down in selling 1,000 garages, every individual item that we sell. It would take all the time away from everything else.
Thank you very much. I think if it's all right, Richard, I'm going to move us on to the vote on this item. So just for everybody's clarity, this is the text of the amendment which we will be voting on. So that is number 1, to agree and approve the housing revenue account asset evaluation policy and process attached to Appendix A, and then the amended text is as follows. So number 2, in line with the disposal process for general fund assets, authorise the Executive Director of Housing in consultation with the Chair of Homes and Housing Delivery Committee and the Section 151 Officer to take all steps required to dispose of assets only after the Homes and Housing Delivery Policy Committee has approved each individual asset disposal, including those that do not exceed the key decision threshold of £500,000. I'm going to ask for members to clearly raise your hands to indicate your vote. So first of all, can we have votes for that amendment? That's 3. And below hands, votes against. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. My maths is terrible. 6. And can I confirm that there are no abstentions? So by my reckoning, that's 3 votes for and 6 against, so that amendment falls. Next, we're going to... Okay. All right, thank you very much. So next, we're going to move on to the policy as a whole. And again, so we've heard the recommendations already. Do we need to read them again?
I think I would just.
Okay. All right. Let's read them out again then. So those are that the Committee of Homes and Housing Delivery agree and approve the Housing Revenue Account Asset Evaluation Policy and Process attached as Appendix A, and authorise the Executive Director of Housing, in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee and the Section 151 Officer, to take decisions related to the disposals programme, including any decision that would otherwise require specific committee approval by virtue of it exceeding the key decision threshold of £500,000. Okay, and may I have votes, first of all, in favour of that? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 5, and against? And that's 3. So with 5 votes for and 3 against, that passes. Right, thanks everyone. Let's move on now to agenda item 16, which is the Tackling Homelessness Programme Quarterly Update. This report provides an update on the progress of the Tackling Homelessness Transformation Programme and is for information only. I'm going to invite Paul Sylvester, Head of Housing Options, to introduce and outline this report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the 4th quarterly update that the committee have received, so you'll be used to the format of the report and what's covered. And, just picking up on what Councillor Eddy said earlier, we are really pleased with progress with the programme across a range of initiatives that are looking to reduce spend on temporary accommodation, but importantly provide better quality temporary accommodation for our clients. The progress update starts on paragraph 4 through to paragraph 25, and I'm just going to give an example of each area of work. So in terms of increasing supply of temporary accommodation, we're really cracking on with our larger acquisitions programme. We're aiming to secure between 75 and 100 properties for use as TA. At the time that we wrote the report, there was 54 properties under offer and 5 had been completed. Regarding new use of registered providers, we commissioned an organisation to develop an outline business plan for a council-owned registered provider, and this outline business plan and the project full business case will be brought to Strategy and Resources Committee in December this year. Increasing access to the private rented sector. So the council continues to refer clients to an organisation called Beam, who help clients into employment and matches them to private rented tenancy and helps them to maintain that tenancy. So this is a pilot with Beam. We've got 12 clients who have moved into private rented properties and 25 are being supported with job hunting. Homelessness prevention. We've recently completed the changes to our service redesign. So we've got a new structure and ways of working, refocusing on homelessness prevention and moving people on from temporary accommodation. And finally, youth homelessness. We've just finalised our joint working protocol with Children's Services for how we work with 16 and 17-year-olds who are homeless. That embeds good practice and, again, a focus on prevention and keeping children at home where it's safe. And finally, last thing I want to note is that we are on track to deliver savings, and the detail of that can be found in the table under paragraph 33. So, happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Paul. We are bearing down on the time allotted for the end of this meeting, so I would really ask if members could keep their questions concise and officers can keep their responses concise. Councillor Logan.
We're in favour of this one. It's really good work, Paul. Well done. So it's of both looking at new supply and looking at how you work with thinking of new ideas. So we look forward to that proposal for the council-owned RSL if that's viable in December. So so it's tremendous the work that's happening in this area. And it's good to see that there's financial impact as well as impact on vulnerable people. So well done.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch.
Sorry, when this policy first came to Strategy and Resources briefing, it actually brought me to tears. So I'm really happy that this is happening and it's coming through, and all power to you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much. It doesn't take much to set me off either, so I'm just going to try and hold it together. Thanks.
Yeah, nor me. Paul and I have shared a number of moments, I would say, together. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you very much, everybody, for your comments. I don't think we need to linger too much further over this programme. I mean, I really do think it's still over £8 million in subsidy loss this year, but it's also really transforming people's lives. You know, people who are, you know, in some cases at the worst point in their entire life, we are able to support them to recover from homelessness, to avoid homelessness, and to forge a new path for themselves. It's phenomenal work. Thank you.
I think Paul deserves a round of applause.
Beg pardon?
I think Paul deserves a round of applause.
Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, I'm going to move on then to the officer recommendations, which are that the Committee for Homes and Housing Delivery notes that the report states that the Tackling Homelessness Programme's financial objectives include £8,205,000 of recurring subsidy loss reduction in 2025-26 and a further £263,000 of recurring cost reduction on children's commissioning. The programme continues to work on additional initiatives that will result in further subsidy loss reduction. That the report states that as per approval of the Transformation Funding at Strategy and Resources Committee on the 19th of May 2025, the Tackling Homelessness Programme revenue budget is £1,925,947 for 25-26, plus the rollover of £792,000 from the 2024-5 programme budget that was not spent, giving a total of £2,717,947, plus £385,000 contingency held centrally by CLB. That no revenue funding has yet been approved for 25-26, but the programme will make a request as necessary in line with the budget setting process later in the year. Thank you. Now, agenda item 17 is the Emergency Accommodation Framework 10 to 11 year leases. This report is seeking approval to lease properties, including from those on the Emergency Accommodation Framework, for over 10 years, beyond the current end of the Emergency Accommodation Framework, and to develop a full business case in parallel with the procurement process. This is a key decision because it involves a spend/saving of over £500,000 and impacts more than 2 wards. There is an exempt appendix included in this report. Should any members wish to discuss any elements contained with this exempt appendix, we will need to move into exempt session. This will involve committee members and relevant officers moving to another room to continue this discussion, which will not be webcast, and committee members voting on the officer recommendations will happen in the chamber. So we'll have to go to another room and then come back in to vote on the recommendations. If we do move into exempt session, I will need to move that and it will need to be seconded. So, first of all, I'm going to invite Paul Sylvester, Head of Housing Options, to introduce and outline the report. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. So this initiative aims to deliver temporary accommodation at a lower cost to the Council by leasing properties from providers on the Emergency Accommodation Framework and potentially others for a minimum of 10 years and a day. So as Chair said, this would mean that the leases would outlast the current framework end date, so this financial commitment requires a decision from the committee. So the programme team cannot begin the procurement process without the delegated authority to do so. However, the full business case, including detailed plan and exact financial details, cannot be confirmed until the procurement process has been completed. So that's why we're asking for delegated authority to continue developing the full business case alongside the procurement process. So in the report, there are 4 options, and there is we're recommending option 4, which is to offer 10 years in a day contracts to existing block providers on our emergency accommodation framework and to additional providers. This option reduces the financial loss to the council and will deliver more temporary accommodation units over a longer term. And it's just important to note that a number of other local authorities, including some core cities that we meet with regularly, are also exploring these opportunities and entering into long-term lease arrangements for TA. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Paul. So, as we've indicated, there is an exempt appendix, and I'm very conscious that members may want to ask questions or have some discussion about the contents of that appendix. So, before we move into our questions and discussion, I'm just going to ask for anyone to raise your hand if you think that we need to go into exempt session in order to discuss what you have to say. Great. Okay. I'm not seeing any hands. So we're going to move on to questions and comments then. And yeah, just to advise members, of course, that we won't be able to refer to anything in the exempt appendix during the public session. So, can I see anyone with something to say? Rob, Councillor Logan.
We should do option 4. This is a very sensible set of proposals, and there are very good reasons for doing what Paul's outlined. Look, I'd love to imagine a situation where we don't need an exempt accommodation framework.
Yeah.
The only reason not to do this is if we envisage that there won't be anyone needing this out within the 10 years.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's likely.
Yeah.
And in terms of how we manage our resources, it will cost us an awful lot more to buy this accommodation in another way. So I think this is the right thing to do. And I never stand in the face of a procurement process.
Fully agree. Thank you, Rob.
Is it okay if I just come back in on that? Because I mean, I look forward to the day when we don't need as much temporary accommodation as we've got now, and I think that actually is a possibility with the things that we're doing and some changes that the government are making. But we need to remember that at the moment we're using quite a lot of council housing for temporary accommodation at the moment. So if we get to a point where we don't need as much, we can certainly turn those homes back into homes for people to live in rather than as temporary accommodations. That gives us quite a bit of a buffer if the good thing happens and our need for TA reduces. Yeah,
yeah, that's a really good point. Councillor Shabalala.
When we had the is it Beazle, whatever, and the door team, you know, the team that makes the doors, I forgot what they call it. They all brought in a business case, a detailed business case. So, is this something that should come with this too? That's got a detailed business case, or is the information that you've provided here saying this is sufficient? I need to choose between A and B, and then I can make the business case, or can the business case be made beforehand, at least with some clear numbers of this is the cost benefit, this is what could happen on each case scenario. That's as detailed as the ask, or the ask is for 10 years. So I'm just looking for a bit more insight into each option, a clear business case, or at least a summary of a business case, than just to go on what I have.
Yeah. Yes, so what we have in the papers is a summary of our current outline business case, where we believe that the case for doing this is very strong. The numbers are clear in terms of the benefits. And of course, we will be working up a full business case where there are some details to be worked through and details to be ironed out, and that will be done as part of that process. We're very happy to provide any further detail outside of this meeting as you need.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any further hands, so I think I'm going to move us on to a vote. So, the offers of recommendations in this report are as follows: that the Committee for Homes and Housing Delivery authorises the Executive Director for Housing, in consultation with the Committee Chair for Homes and Housing Delivery, to take all necessary steps to enter into leases of at least 10 years plus 1 day against individual properties from providers, whether on the emergency accommodation framework or not, to satisfy the Council's emergency accommodation demands. That it approves spend as stated in the exempt appendix beyond the current expected end date of the emergency accommodation framework and over the remaining term of the leases. It authorises the Executive Director for Homes and Housing Delivery, in consultation with the Chair of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee, to approve the full business case at the Tackling Homelessness Programme Board, confirming expected spend and any potential ongoing cost reduction. So I move those recommendations, and I'd like to ask for a seconder, please. Councillor Logan got there first, I think. Quite like this game. Right, thank you very much. So I'm going to move us to a vote now. So again, please indicate clearly with your hand, and I'm going to ask first of all for votes for the recommendations. And that's a full house, so that is approved unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. So this is the end of the meeting. I'd really like to thank members and officers and members of the public, indeed, for your patience and for so graciously acceding to my request for concision. We've managed to get in just within the allotted time for this meeting, so I'm really grateful to everybody for that. The next meeting of the Homes and Housing Delivery Committee will be at 10 a.m. on Friday the 19th of September 2025, and that concludes the meeting. Thank you.
I'd just like to say well done, for this was a really big agenda with a lot of controversial and heavy stuff. So well done, Barry, for keeping us all in time. That was very well done.
Thank you, Zoe. I appreciate that.